movie is to think of the future as something that you make, not something that's going to happen to you. And that's easier said than done, right? We don't want to be Pollyanna or pie in the sky.
Right.
There's a lot of challenges to that. And even in the history of futurism, it's never been kind of clean cut, like, hey, we were optimistic once and then we weren't, you know? It's always been complicated. But I do think that there was something about the way that people back in mid-century America, especially when they were inspired by expressions of futurism in the space race program, there was something about that was really inspiring.
Yeah.
And it inspired them in various areas of life, you know?
Right.
Like the space program, for example, just didn't inspire people to like be astronauts. You know, it inspired people to be artists, scientists, engineers, and it spurred a lot of innovations. And the greatest innovation of the 20th century came during the 50s, 60s, and 70s as a result of people being inspired by the space program. I think that we as a culture need to kind of recover some of that, give people sources of inspiration to kind of like spur them with that kind of thing. And so that's what I would say to the optimists out there, is to think about the future as something that you make, and what are you doing about it?
All the years I've been living, I've always felt tomorrow's going to be better than today.
Yeah.
And I keep wanting to believe that. I think we'll all be very proud of the fact that they're furthering his philosophy.
Yeah.
That's all. It's all his philosophy.
Yeah.
Disneyland is his philosophy. Giving people a wonderful place to be nostalgic and also see the future.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
He's a great dreamer like that. I was very excited, you know, to have him using the song in the film. And I was there when they re-recorded it.
Yeah.
It sounds fantastic, you know, the little 75-piece orchestra.
Yeah.
It was marvelous.
Very hard. You know, this because it's a tentpole movie that doesn't have some of the things that a typical tentpole movie has, like massive explosions and gunfire and a lot of people running around and blowing stuff up, and you know, it's a movie you have to think about.
Yeah.
You know, it's a movie with two young women that are driving the story and acting against and with George Clooney.
Yeah.
And so it was a really hard thing for Disney to wrap their arms around. But Tomorrowland being such a wonderful intellectual property, and Brad Bird and Damon Lindelof being some of the most amazing storytellers, it was a combination that Disney just realized they couldn't turn down.
Right.
And it gave them something that was super unique.
Yeah.
And that's what we hope we've really created with this film. That's not the third in a sequel.
Right.
It's a unique, one-of-a-kind movie that Brad really had, and Damon have just so much passion behind.
Yeah.
And it's been a wonderful ride over the last 3 years. And you know, and that's the great thing that Brad's been able to do, is that he's really stuck to his guns about the originality of the picture. And we had to embrace that. And we really, really tried to not have everything go out there all at once about the film, and really teased it out. And that's something Disney has been so incredibly supportive of. And they've opened up all of the archives, and they've opened up all of the things that allowed us to really give this movie the feel and the texture that, you know, somebody like Walt, I think, would be proud of.
I grew up and worked here during the great time when Walt Disney brought all those World's Fair shows back. And I remember throwing my hot dog away to get in to see Carousel of Progress. So now we're going to see kind of the next step of all that. So we erased the years in between. I went right from what Walt did then, whatever they've conjured up now. So I'm really excited to see, I think, what's going to be the first inspirational or positive tomorrow that's been on the screen in a long, long time. So I'm tired of dystopia. I think it's a mindset thing. I mean, you know, people are so busy now to not slow down and enjoy the things that I think you had to do when you didn't have all the technical wonders. And I was guilty. I mean, all of that stuff. You only have 24 hours.
Yeah.
Like this much, this much, this much. I bought a cabin and I was up there yesterday. It's like this deep in snow.
Oh, wow.
And it's only 1 hour from here.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And that's your Tomorrowland.
Yeah, it is. When you say, to get away from dystopia, I think everyone would want to be along a river somewhere in a beautiful forested zone, and you know, that's the tomorrow. I even made a joke when we were struggling with this a few years back. I said, let's just take the Tomorrowland plaque and move it from where it's located over to Frontierland. Think about it. If you had enough money, you'd probably move to Montana, get a beautiful log cabin with internet service, and you know, there it is.
Well, it happens to be called Tomorrowland, but it actually is not derived from what we think of as Tomorrowland when we think about the Walt Disney theme parks.
Right.
But there is an homage paid to Tomorrowland going all the way back to the 1964 revelation of the ride It's a Small, Small World, and that's in the film.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a nice, if you will, synergistic thing that happens to be the name of one of our lands, and at the same time it's the name of our movie. But I'm excited about you seeing the film. I think it's quite unique, special, creative, and up and down. Of course, and we're here. That's one of the reasons we had the premiere here at Disneyland.
Right,
Tonight's Tomorrowland World Premiere right there. Yeah. So it's pretty exciting.
I never do that. I never sort of listen to other things to get in the mood. It's more, for me, it's all about listening to what the story is.
Okay.
And connecting with the characters and trying to understand what it is they're going through and what they're feeling.
Right.
You know, and ideally, I can watch a movie and feel something and then try to give that back to you in music.
Yeah.
And that's generally what I like to do.
Right.
You know, when they're making these films, a lot of times they will put temp music in and things like that. And I don't, as much as I can as possible, I don't listen to any of it.
Right.
Because I want to do something that feels fresh and different, and when you hear it, you feel like, oh, that's Tomorrowland music. You know, I don't want music that you can just throw into any film.
Any other film.
You know, it's just sort of want to make something special for that. You know, Brad and I actually go down. I like watching him film. I like doing all of that. But for me, the real work starts when I get to watch a version of the movie. I watch a version of the movie, and I just go away and I think about it. And then I'll write, for this movie, I wrote like a 12-minute suite.
Yeah.
You know, that sort of said, Brad, here's how I felt.
Yeah.
This is how it made me feel. Does any of this resonate with you? You know, and then we go through that, and that's the beginning of it. And then once we sort of pick all the parts that we agree on, we want to do, then it's about saying, okay, now I'm just going to go and write the movie. And I start at the very beginning scene, and I go to the very end.
Straight through.
Everything in order.
Yeah.
You know, that way I feel like the score will hopefully develop in the proper way.
Right.
I don't like jumping in and out of order, doing things, you know, because then it just doesn't feel right to me. You know, I like it to feel like from beginning to end, like its own story.
Right.
So if you listen to the soundtrack, you can pretty much replay the story in your head.
Yeah.
That's the goal for me. That's what I loved about listening to soundtracks as a kid.
Yeah.
You know, reimagining the story, because as a kid, I couldn't just throw a DVD in or a VHS because it didn't exist.
Yeah.
You know, the only way to relive a movie was to listen to the score and imagine it in your head. So that's always been the inspiration to do something like that. Yeah, I did. I played a World's Fair ride operator, and I think he is the centerpiece of the entire movie. I think when you see the movie, you're going to focus on that ride operator and feel like the movie is about that. Why I don't have a character poster out here, I'm not quite sure. They probably got lost. I'm sure somebody must be bringing it, I'm sure.
I'm kind of a sucker for a happy ending anyway.
Yeah.
So, you know, anything that ends and you feel like, oh, the world's not so bad. It is still a family show.
Right.
But there's some
hope.
Crazy
some
things that
optimism.
happen. Yeah. Of course, there's always optimism. You know, and at its core, you know, you could see it as a fight between good and evil.
Right.
And you know, Ward is somewhere in between. So that's what makes him interesting. I feel like, and why a lot of fans respond is that he's not predictable. Because the good guys are going to save the world, the bad guys are going to try and destroy it. And this good guy, like, just kind of plays them both. Whenever he wants or whenever is convenient. So it's exciting to see. And the season finale was so young, and they were as a family, and you know, I don't remember anything other than my dad getting churros, and I think like every stop along the way to a point where it was just like, Dad, you know. But it's funny now; it's kind of full circle. That's the first thing that I want to do when I get there too. Is see the churro myself.
And there's no such thing as regular people. We're all the same.
Trade your Sharpie for a photo.
Long before I ever was successful, I was raised in an era and a time where you were taught that your voice could matter. Right. You know, we had the civil rights movement, we had the women's rights movements, and the Vietnam War, and we all believed that if you got involved, you could change it. So everybody keep going.